Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow in continuing interesting times. Lance, Katie, thank you for joining us. Go ahead, Lance. You right.
Hey, Bob. Since it's an election, I'm not going to cause a problem here, but it doesn't matter which person gets elected president. There is bipartisan support for the SBA. Republicans love the SBA. Democrats love the SBA. All is good.
Yeah, I think
be a good SBA citizen.
Be a good SBA citizen. Huge news yesterday, Lance. What happened?
SBA released 4 new forms. They're not new forms. They were existing forms, but the previous forms were not fully compliant with the SOP 5010-6. So in the 1919 and 1920, we all use that on every SBA loan that we do. So they made the 1919 and 1920 compliant with the SOP 5010-6. If you guys are interested, we are doing a webinar next Tuesday, Bob, shameless plug, on the new SBA forms. The 1971 is the religious eligibility form. And I think what they did with it is made it easier to understand, easier to make a religious eligibility determination. And then the post-closing servicing action form, the 2237, when you have an increase in the loan amount or an increase in the guarantee fee or decreases, they revised that form to also make it compliant with the SOP 5010-6. So 4 new forms that are released, and the effective date on these forms was yesterday.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's go through the poll questions. Let's see. Have you reviewed the new borrower/lender information for SBA Forms 1919/1920?
Bob, you know me, I'm a form geek, so I've already taken a deep dive.
I'm surprised. Good for you. A third say yes. If you're in the know, don't worry about it. I mean, this hit less than 24 hours ago, and you were probably preoccupied with other stuff that was maybe that is a lot more interesting than than verbiage on an SBA form.
I got to say every election, I've stayed up till about 12:30 Central Time, and I know who's the president the next day when I wake up. Not this time.
So did President Dewey, but we won't go through my history lessons. Hey, the reason why we asked this question is we asked it yesterday, and we were commenting that 1% said yes, and we got an email, and the person who answered yes made a mistake. So we thought we'd ask it again. What we're trying to find out, has SB approved anything over, there you go, over $2 million? And the answer obviously is no. And we were offering a little redemption to the kind person who said, oops, I screwed up with your numbers.
Well, and the deal on the SBA PPP loans that are over $2 million, those are going to be reviewed. I mean, there's a checkbox on the form. Those are going to get reviewed. So I would suggest forgiveness is going to come quite a bit slower on those PPP loans.
Finally, a couple of things. We have a new religious test form, and I thought it'd be interesting to determine what percentage of your loans are affected.
Guys, we got to run. It's like kids running up and down the hallway with scissors. At least that's what my mom used to tell me it was when we were running out of control. During PPP, we got to do all sorts of, we could do churches, we could do all sorts of loans that would nonprofits that would normally not be eligible. And just because there's a religious affiliation doesn't mean that it's ineligible. And that's why we have the new Form 1971 to help us make those determinations.
Predominantly for daycares who are leasing property from a church, synagogue, temple, whatever. Yeah. So that's interesting. So put the numbers back up. I want to see that 10 to 20% number again. 0 to 10, 40%. Good. I'm glad to see that. Let's talk about the form, the big news. Oh, just sort of clean up. Lance, there's also a form on Community Advantage, but we've chosen just let the Community Advantage lenders know there is a new form for that, but we're not covering that. How many Community Advantages are there? Katie, do you know offhand?
I don't know.
Yeah, so if you're a Community Advantage lender, there is a new form for that. All the forms are in the dashboard. Are they up on the website now?
They are
SBS?
on the website now. You kind of search for it though. I had to type in the actual form number. It wasn't coming up just under the general pages. So you do have to type in the number, but they are up there.
And what about the 3509, 3510? Are those up on the website yet? The
Not up
Treasury?
yet. No,
Not
those
yet.
are not.
Okay, those are the forms that came out on Friday on for-profit and nonprofits. So as soon as those are up on the website, we will release those as well. Lance, first question for you is that I thought SBA was going to get away from this, but they said implement it immediately unless the loan is in process. What does that mean?
Well, Bob, it's a very ambiguous term. Here's how I interpret that. If you have a new loan that came in yesterday or today or any day going forward, you are required to use the new 1919, 1920, 1971. And if you have a, post-approval servicing action, the 2237. If you have a loan that was already in your shop that you've already collected the 1919 on, it primarily, Bob, the form that is most impacted here is the 1919. If you have somebody that you've already collected the 1919, they've completed it, signed it, and it was dated prior to November the 3rd, I'm of the opinion that you can continue to use that form 1919.
That seems prudent. That seems reasonable. I agree. And then I assume
on the form 20, Bob, you got to start using the new form. That's the lender's form. Doesn't matter if the loan's already in the shop. You're able to use the new 1920 starting yesterday and going forward. Same thing with the 1971 and the 2237. The only issue with the in process, Bob, I think, is the 1919. One of my fellow lenders and I were talking about this yesterday because, I've got 10, 12 loans in process where I've already collected 1919s. Am I going to have to go back and bother the borrower to get a new form completed? And my understanding with the release that SBA got is if you've already got a 1919 collected, you have a loan that's in process, it's signed and dated prior to November the 3rd.
I mean, that seems reasonable.
It'll be okay to use the previous form.
The good news is we're not going to read all this, but Lance give us some of the highlights and the changes in the 1919.
Well, and I'm going to paraphrase, guys, primarily what the 1919 and 1920, what they did is made those compliant with the changes in the SOP 5010-6. They added things like if the equity injection was coming from a rollover, there's a section for that. There's a new section that helps with the affiliation determination. So, I mean, they're not huge changes. The form looks different. But the primary reason they released it is to make sure the 1919 is compliant with the SOP 5010-6. And also, the 912s, you're not going to have to do 912s going forward. So they've got the appropriate information in there to allow that.
Unless there is a time you need the 912, unless when, Lance?
There's certain occasions when a 912 might be necessary, but not very often.
It's my favorite poll question. We get everyone on that. 912s are still required if they're answering yes on some of those questions. Katie, what's going on with the 1920? This is the lender certification. Anything that stands out for you?
They just kind of expanded some, the general eligibility section. added some more verbiage to the FICO score questions and the fixed base rate, and in general just added a couple new sections. Most of this was already somewhere in there. They've just moved it around a little bit and changed some of the verbiage they used to make it a little clearer and compliant with the new SFP.
Yeah, I know that they're more, I like the general eligibility, more detailed with respect to 401k rollover plans or ROBS plans and the FICO score. Lance, as an aside, I got an email. Go ahead, Lance.
I was just going to say one thing they continue to do, and I want to put this out there for all my fellow lenders to think about. We continue to get verbiage about how important the credit memo is, and with the release of the 1920, they continue to make sure we understand. They talked about when you submit the credit memo, but just the fact that they put that in the release, your credit memo is critically important that it includes information about eligibility, information about credit elsewhere.
You're going to go through that.
Yeah, if you've got an equity injection with a rollover, it's important that that's in there. Your credit memo needs to have some SBA specific information, and SBA is wanting to see that.
I apologize for talking over you, but in your webinar, I know you're going to be talking about the updated credit memos and things you need to include. There's more and more guidance that SBA is giving us on that for that. And as an aside, what we do, since we're shamelessly plugging our webinars, what we do also for our industry-specific webinars, i.e. hotel, hospitality, is in a couple weeks. We also give a addendum that the underwriter can use to make sure they have all the SBA guidance requirements checked. Here we go. This one a little bit easier to read. First of all, what is the 1971, Lance?
That's a religious affiliation form, and the main thing they did with this is just made it easier to understand. The 1971 wasn't incredibly difficult, but this is more concise and easier for a borrower and a participant bank to understand. So they improved.
The other thing they did, Katie, is they came out with guidance without clarification on PPP forgiveness. What is this form all about, Katie?
The guidance form was just some information for primarily the borrower to understand the process. So there's no real change to lenders or anything like that, but it is a great form to maybe direct your borrowers if they're getting confused about this. We are seeing the numbers are pretty high on borrowers who are just very confused about this process.
Oh,
so I think that might help that along.
So make sure you get that in downline. And the SBA Form 2237, what is this one about, Katie?
So this one's just super simple changes. They added some new instructions, changed some of the check boxes, and modified the checklist.
Lance, I got an email from an Emily, and she's saying E-Tran is experiencing some issues with credit scoring and processing. Is this something that we should be concerned about, or are these just normal glitches that happen from time to time?
I think it's just a temporary glitch, Bob. It should be up and running again.
Yeah. Katie, I know this is near and dear to your heart because you love this assignment. Talk to us about our professional awards.
So we've been doing this for a little while now, and I'm really excited to see some of the applicants this year, especially since we've added the new PPP Lender of the Year. I think it's a great way to recognize the professionals in this industry and see all they've done, especially things like the mission-based lenders and the rural lenders. I love to see the ways they're helping America really grow, and in this case, we're going to see some who are really helping with recovery.
Yeah. We've had the question, is this an individual award or an institution award? It is a individual award. However, we have in the past CDC Small Business out of San Diego. They nominated their entire department, And so the 3 or 4 individuals in the department did receive the awards, but we make it for the individual. And this is our way of giving back. No charge. We send you a plaque. Normally we buy you lunch. No lunch this year, but eventually it's sometime in the future. there may be lunch. Maybe what we need to do, Katie, is send them a box. I don't know what Jennifer did.
Send them a Hello Fresh box.
There you go. We have a couple of webinars coming up, and Brett has a Texas question for Lance. Are you allowed to place a first or second lien position on a primary resident in Texas, given the Texas homestead law? This is for a 7A loan. This comes up from time to time.
Yeah, given Texas homestead law, I don't even know why you would add a junior mortgage on an SBA loan as additional collateral. I think you can cite the Texas homestead law. I'm not an attorney, but, you're not going to be able, if you take a junior mortgage as part of your collateral as an abundance of caution, you're not going to be able to perfect that.
Right. Very good. We are going to be releasing, we wanted to wait till after the results from the election, so I'm going to hold off one more day on releasing our top 10 things the C-suite and board of directors need to know. We were going to send it out today, but I'm going to hold off one more day for some additional.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, Lance.
Also on that Texas question, I know we have a lot of people from Texas here. If I'm off base on that, please let us know.
Yeah, I haven't addressed that. The answer is I'm not an expert on that. Maybe what we'll do is... Go ahead.
I know Jim Kaler's usually on. Jim, if you're on, let us know if I was right. But, with Texas law related to residential property.
I love playing Stump the Professor.
Yeah.
Anyway, I tell you what, we'll address this tomorrow. We'll get the clarification on Texas law. Hey, thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street in interesting times. One interesting entrepreneur at a time. Thanks a lot.